Jim Rogers, a renowned international investor, chairman of Rogers Holdings. He is an outspoken bull on commodities and Asia. Earlier in his career, he also co-founded the Quantum Fund with George Soros. You're putting us to sartorial shame with that summer suit today.
Well, I live in the tropics, Scott, so I've just gotten off a plane from China. Here I am.
All right, well, you look great. It's great to have you. We've heard from the traders. What's the most important thing you're watching today?
Well, I'm watching the whole world. I'm very worried about what's happening with central banks. Central banks are printing a lot of money. It's not going to be good for any of us unless you own the right things. And let's hope that I own the right things.
So much for the Spain bailout. Why do you think the euphoria has been so short-lived today?
But Scott, it's nothing more than pushing the thing out into the future. It's making the situation worse. The solution to too much debt is not more debt. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. It's going to make the collapse when it comes even worse. Be careful. You should be not careful. You should be worried.
What would you have done? Well, I mean, what was the right answer?
I'd let them go bankrupt. I would let all those people who are... Scott, the way the system is supposed to work, when you fail, you fail. Competent people come in, take over the assets, reorganize, and start over. What we are doing in the West, we're taking the assets from the competent people, giving them to the incompetent people, and saying, okay, now you compete with the competent people with their money. It's absurd economics. It's absurd morality, and it's absurd economics.
That would be your same argument as it relates to Greece, then? We're looking forward to elections in
Greece should be
less than a week.
Greece should be the first to go bankrupt. Let Greece go bankrupt, and then the others would realize, okay, guys, we got to shape up. If we don't shape up, we're finished. And that would be a good lesson for Europe, good lesson for the West, and then the euro would be a very strong currency, and we should buy all the euros we can.
Despite all of that, and as negative as that could be perceived as, you sounding, you're long commodities. You still believe in that story. You're long various currencies as well. So you're looking for opportunity and making money on the long side of things too. I want to make that clear. You're not shorting the whole world and running into the jungle.
I'm long a lot of stuff. But Scott, we in the West have made some terrible mistakes in the past 30 or 40 years. We have run up staggering debts. You don't just run up staggering debts and one day wake up and say, oh well, we made a mistake. Now everything is okay. Somebody has to pay the piper, and you know who it is? You, me, and everybody watching this show.
Yeah, said you just got off the plane from China. There was a lot of data out over the weekend. Are you a China bull?
I own Chinese shares, and I own the currency. I'm not buying Chinese shares at the moment. I like to buy Chinese shares when they collapse. They've been doing nothing for the last 3 years.
But for most of the people who say China's heading for a hard landing, you don't buy that?
Some Chinese property, Chinese real estate may be heading for a hard landing. The Chinese government has been trying for 3 years to make it have a hard landing. They've been trying to drive prices down. But other parts of the Chinese economy are going to continue to boom. I mean, if you're in environmental treatment or water treatment or agriculture in China, you don't care if people in Shanghai go bankrupt. You're making too much money. You're having too much fun.
We'll talk about opportunity in China with you a little bit later throughout the show. John Rutledge is going to join us as well, knows of China as well as you and others certainly do. Let's hit the markets, though. The average is open this morning in the green.
Buy more. I own gold, and I'd like to buy more. How much further down will it go?
Well, here's the thing. We've seen dips in the past, especially in the miners. They've underperformed. But I think maybe you could comment on this. When I read that blurb about Germany refusing to loan any more money unless it's actually backed in gold, I think that's huge.
Well, no, of course it is.
but everyone seemed to have missed it because that's why we saw the run-up in these miners and in gold last week. And I think we're starting to see that back off of those levels. So I don't think people are focusing on that statement, how big that statement is, that you should buy any and all dips in gold.
Well, I will tell you what's worth. No, they should not buy any and all dips. And I will tell you what worries me. The Indians are thinking about sort of almost closing down the purchase of gold in India. And as you know, India is the largest buyer of gold in the world. So if India does do something, gold could go to, I don't know, 1,200, 1,300. I'm asking you because you're the genius.
Jim, I'm glad you mentioned India, because the Indian rupee just a week ago or so traded to an all-time low versus the United States dollar. If we saw one thing in May, it was that the safety trade is not running to gold, it's running to the U.S. dollar, and the dollar soared against all the BRIC currencies, but most of all against India. Isn't a slowing emerging market world deflationary and therefore actually gold negative?
In fact, you're negative emerging markets.
Yeah, I'm short India, and I'm short most emerging markets because of just partly of what you just got through saying. But The problem, Steve, is if things slow down, what are governments going to do? They're going to print money. That's all they know to do. It's the wrong thing to do, but they're not very smart people. That's why they work for the government. So they're going to go out and print money. And if they print money, real assets are going to go through the roof.
And then let's play right off of that and get to Goldman Sachs today, recommending investors go long commodities. In a note released this morning, Goldman says commodity price risks are shifting to the upside and sees prices rising for copper, gold, crude, gas, and aluminum. So obviously, Jim, you agree with this call from Goldman, getting more bullish on commodities. Prices have come down so much, right? We just talked about the CRB index in the month of May was a disaster. It was down double-digit percentage points. You know that as well as anybody.
Oh, I certainly do. I'm long commodities. Of course, I know it. No, but I'm not a trader. You got a group of people here who are good traders. I'm not. I buy things and own them for years. I don't pay attention to short-term fluctuations. But when things go down, I like to buy more. As I said, if gold goes down, I'm going to buy more. And I was asking Steve how much further down it's going to go. I want to know when to buy, not when to sell.
Grasso, you think about that for a while. We're going to come back to you before we wrap it today, and you're going to give Jim Rogers an answer. But in the meantime, Doc, give me your thought on this Goldman call on commodities.
I'll give you that, Scott. I think they're about 5 days early because I don't think until Sunday next week, so let's say 6 days early, that you really want to be diving in because I think that will be a pivot point for the euro. I think it'll be a positive pivot. I'll also say from the bailout over the weekend that they should have just backstopped these banks. Instead of bailing them out and giving them money, they should have just backstopped the depositors, Scott. That way they could have done exactly what Jimmy Rogers is saying. They could have let them go bankrupt. And those depositors, you wouldn't have the runs on the banks as long as you said, hey, your money in that Spanish bank, in that bank in Italy or wherever is still safe.
But John,
that's been the problem, that they haven't done that. Giving money to the banks won't fix that.
John, what happens on Sunday? What's going to happen on Sunday that I don't know about?
Well, you do know that the Greek vote is going to be Sunday, and whether or not, of course, we get a communist takeover of Greece or whether or not cooler heads prevail. They've already seen, Jimmy, as we've all watched, what happens when they just tighten up austerity really hard. That's not going to be the ultimate solution for Greece, but they do have to collect taxes. They haven't been doing that. Whoever gets in charge there is going to have to both have real estate and income taxes. They're going to actually collect it instead of just charge it and then not collect it.
Biggest question right now as it relates to where commodities go, is it Europe or is it China? Import-export data was much better than expected. You just got back from China. Plane touched down, less than 24 hours ago. So you have the best read on the panel, certainly, about what's happening there.
I did just get off the plane. I may fall asleep. If I fall asleep, guys, wake me up, okay? No, Europe's much more important. I mean, Europe is 3 or 4 times bigger than the Chinese economy, Europe as a whole. No, China's doing a good job. You got to worry about Europe and America much more than China.
Okay. Coming up on halftime, is Apple's Tim Cook less than an